Iowa Live.
From the Carl Chevrolet Studios in West Des Moines, welcome to Iowa Live. I am Lou, and it is time to have a conversation with attorney Kim Baer. And this morning, we're talking about what could be a very complicated issue because it talks about medical and medical malpractice. First of all, Kim, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Lou.
This is really some interesting cases that you have when it involves medical malpractice. But first, let's explain what that is.
Yes, so I think what's important for people to know about medical malpractice is you have to prove two things. One, that you were harmed by a medical person. So that can be a doctor, a nurse, a hospital, a pharmacist, in some cases a dentist. You know, ophthalmologist. I mean, so anybody that has a medical degree, that would be kind of considered medical malpractice. So first you have to show that they deviated from the standard of care. In other words, they did something wrong that other doctors or nurses or pharmacists wouldn't have done. And then you have to show that it really caused you harm. And so those are the two things we have to show. And usually we need expert testimony. We need somebody that practices in that area to review the records and tell us, I mean, can we meet those two hurdles?
Okay, what kind of examples can we use here to give everybody a better idea?
Sure. I think some of the examples from our practice I can tell you about is we've had cases where a sponge was left in someone after surgery. It came up later when somebody was having a PET scan, and that was too bad because it was embedded in their colon and it had to be removed. Medication errors. We've had cases where someone's gone into the hospital and the test results were read wrong and the person died the next day. We've had situations where people have gone into the doctor and they weren't sent to the hospital and they were having chest pains and they were told, you know, look, it's just antacid, go home and, you know, take Tums, and then the person died of a heart attack the next day.
We hear those stories quite often.
Yeah, and medication errors. I don't remember the statistics, but they're pretty astounding with regard to the number of people that are harmed or die from medication issues and medical malpractice. It's quite high.
What about misdiagnosis?
Yes, so misdiagnosis can go either way. I mean, we've had cases where somebody was told they had cancer, and so they had their esophagus removed because they thought they had esophageal cancer, and it turned out later they did not.
Oh my goodness.
But you know, the more common case that we see would be a situation where someone's told, you know, you don't have cancer. We've read the scans, and something went awry, and they did have cancer. And usually those cases are somebody, a radiologist or someone didn't read the report properly, or they just didn't read it. So
okay, so yeah, that's definitely medical malpractice there. So you have something that has occurred.
Yes.
Okay, so that'd be the first step, and then you need to prove you said something different than the standard care. Right.
So you have to prove that there was a breach of the standard of care, and one of the things that is really important to remember is, you know, the practice of medicine is an art, and there isn't anything that's foolproof. And so you have to remember that there are risks to surgeries and treatment. And if it's a known, if you know something happens to you, maybe you're going to have an angiogram, and unfortunately something happens during the angiogram with regard to a tear or something like that. That might be a known risk, and that's something that it happens in certain cases. And so, is it going to be medical malpractice? It might not be. But the other thing, we get calls all the time, and people say, you know, this happened and this happened, and that sounds like medical negligence, and I almost died, but the other doctor came in and saved my life.
I've heard that a lot.
Yes.
Thank goodness for the other doctor.
Absolutely, thank goodness. But so you can't meet that second prong. You can't show that you had a permanent injury or a serious injury as a result of and thank God. I mean, we don't.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, we want you to be okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to make sure that we talked about today is just to remind people that you have a 2-year statute of limitations. A lot of the calls we get in our office, people have just waited too long. There are exceptions, and so if you think you have a medical malpractice case, you should call a medical malpractice attorney just to make sure, because we have some exceptions with regard to minors. We have a discovery rule. We have, you know, was it part of an ongoing treatment? And so a lawyer would be able to help you with that. But for the most part, we're looking at 2 years, you know, and then, like I said, there are some exceptions under the statute.
Yeah, discovery rule, I think we've talked about this before. Let's use a sponge, for example, again, that you might not have discovered the sponge inside of you for years afterwards.
Correct.
But then you found it was there.
Yes, and then you found it. And then you found it,
But
yes.
it's from the time that is discovered, right?
Right. And Iowa does have a statute of repose, and so there are some claims that are just going to end after a certain amount of time. But again, if you talk to a lawyer who practices in this area, they're going to know all of that and they'll be able to help you. And one of the other pointers I would give people is if you think something's gone wrong, order the records. Get them now, because the first thing, if you call a lawyer like me who practices in medical negligence, we're going to ask you, if we think there's a case, we're going to ask you to go get the records. And so if you already have the records, they've already been ordered, that would be great.
How do they call a lawyer like you, Kim?
Yeah. Well, you can just give us a call at 515-279-2000 or 515-INJURED, and we're happy to talk to you about what the situation is and see if we can help.
All right, great information, because medical malpractice is expensive.
It is.
Because you have a lot of things to pay for too, but get the right advice from people like Kim Baer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Lou.
Okay, we'll be right back.